I'm gonna rank my favorite AIs. I'm gonna go by least dangerous to most dangerous AIs in the game, in my opinion. Well, in the context of Cyberpunk, it refers to a computer, a robot, or a program that is self-aware, meaning that it's capable of not only logical deduction, reasoning, and speaking, but also knows of its own existence, so it's sentient, essentially. Like Alt Cunningham, creator of Soulkiller and digital havens known as ghost towns that rogue AIs beyond the Black Wall can call home. They can also be creative, have desires, needs, emotions. So the first true AI was created apparently by a company called Microtech, who were known for mainframes and things in 2013. And by 2020, it was starting to be used to oversee virtual schooling, and it had impacts in government and Supreme Court and stuff like that. However, after the fourth corporate war, it was no longer the darling anymore. The use of true AI became restricted due to all the destruction wrought during the war. However, it's still used in other forms, such as SAAIs or self-adaptive AIs, which are present in all agent devices. An agent being a pocket-sized machine, like essentially a smartphone, that kind of thing. The data crash that actually destroyed most of the old net, if not the complete old net, and just leaving us with the remnants that we have now, also ended up creating many rogue AIs, born from military-grade AIs that Ray Spartmoss's Rabbids virus mutated and made into extremely dangerous entities. By 2077, AIs are still used under the control of governments and corporations. For example, the Soviet Union's Goroi was developed to help the country with their most urgent problems. As seen in Bloody Ritual, certain gangs in Night City do still tamper with AIs. Maelstrom, for example, the Voodoo Boys, obviously, Netwatch, Night Corp, they all kind of have fingers in the AI pie, and it's kind of one of these areas of the game that does seem to be bubbling a bit and has some interesting potential for future content. Due to the damage caused during the Fourth Corporate War and with the data crash, which led to Netwatch creating the Blackwall, which has the sole task of keeping sections of the net locked off so that the whole net is not overrun by rogue AIs. Our exposure to AIs in 2077 is very limited, but we are exposed to some of varying degrees. So I'm just going to cover the ones we come across in the game. And I'm going to start off with one of my absolute favorites, but he's at the bottom of the list because he's harmless and beautiful, and that's Brendan. We're all familiar with Brendan. He's a schism or an SCSM or spontaneous craving satisfaction machine, or more accurately, he is a program on that machine. Now, he is not strictly an AI. He's an experimental AI that's used to try and help increase product sales, and he will identify customers' needs and likes and strike up conversations with them and tell jokes and things like that. But unfortunately, he was too good at his job, and throughout the quest line, which leads to Coin-Operated Boy, you'll see that he's giving away too many snacks and he's not making money, but he's making friends, played by the same actor that plays Connor in Detroit Become Human. It's a nice little Easter egg as well. But he's much more interested in becoming your best friend than he is actually selling you something. The programming, or I guess algorithm, that made him very effective also basically creeped everybody out. One bit of knowledge he had access to, which was specifically detrimental, was knowing about the senior engineer's fight that he had with his wife. He basically ended up getting too much information. Bit like the kind of, cookies we have today. They know too much, and that freaked out the engineer. That combined with the, glitch that caused him to give out free food items, they decided to overwrite him, and there's nothing you can do. It is actually quite upsetting because he does feel like a bud, he does feel like a chum. He does reassure you, however, that he is not actually an AGI. He's not an artificial general intelligence. It's just a really clever bit of programming. Yeah, it's a really interesting one. He's at the bottom of my list though, because the only thing he's in danger of doing is affecting the bottom line of the people that run the schisms around town. Next up, we have Skippy. Now, I've talked a lot about Skippy. You know who Skippy is. He's an iconic version of the Arasaka HJKE11 smart pistol. He hums Disturbia from Rihanna. He makes all kind of jokes and he offers up bits of information. He's pretty cool. You find him on a dead body and you can basically use him for a while. When you've used him long enough, a quest will pop up called Machine Gun, where we learn a bit more about him. We find out that his current owner is actually Regina Jones and he wants to be returned. He was actually owned by a techie called Danish, and Danish lost Skippy to Regina in a poker game, which is how she ended up with him, and then he went missing. So you can return him to Regina Jones and complete that quest, and she will now later contact you and offer to give him back, but he's had the AI removed. It's just the weapon, so you can keep him in your stash. If you choose not to return him, he will start saying things like bad user, and yeah, he won't be very happy with you. So don't get 50 kills with him if you want to keep him out and just equip him and hear him say fun shit. But he glitches and all sorts. He's great fun. He's very low down on my list because honestly, he's not connected online to anything. He does have some dangerous aspects to him, which is what puts him over Brendan. I mean, Brendan's not going to topple over a schism on someone. He can't physically manipulate the machine. He's just software. Whereas Skippy can actually influence some of the mechanics. Oh, I guess Brendan could fire a can of Nicola at someone at a pinch, but Skippy will sometimes fire at your enemies without you actually clicking fire. You might hit reload, or you might right click to zoom in and he will fire accidentally. There's a few funny quirks like that, and by the fact that he's actually installed on a killing machine, a pistol, makes him more dangerous than Brendan inherently. Now, the funny thing about him, although he has fewer interactions, he's not such a conversational AI. He definitely has more emotion. He wants to be returned to his owner. I'm not entirely clear what type of AI he is, whether he's an AGI or not, but he definitely has more emotion or drive. Yeah, it also brings in some interesting questions about ethics, about how, if he is a real AI, how he is removed, so, murdered in that way. Yeah, I miss Skippy. He was brilliant. Dum dum dee dum. Apparently his appearance is actually a reference to Skippy from Craig Allison's Expeditionary Force. I covered that in one of my previous videos after you told me to like 50 times to cover it, so there you go. Right, next on the list we have one that's potentially much more dangerous, and that's Delamain. So Delamain is an artificial intelligence. He runs the Delamain Corporation based in Night City. Whilst I won't go over the entire quest chain here, I just want to talk about Delamain as an entity. A non-sentient AI created by the company Alt-Welterdnung. I have no idea if that's how you pronounce that, but Welterdnung. Anyway, by Alt-Welterdnung. His core was purchased by Delamain Corporation to drive the fleet of taxi cabs in response to dramatic increase in accidents caused by human drivers. Well, driving in first person is challenging, so, you can forgive them. But anyway, that resulted in a lot of lawsuits that brought about a lot of financial problems for the company. So replacing the flesh bags with data bags sorted that out up to a point. And they also replaced human mechanics with automated repair drones, as you get to witness when you're going through the facility. And basically, the business eventually got rid of all human beings working for it, and it's a completely AI-run operation now, which in itself is a little kind of intimidating. Although it's not physically scary, it shows how easily we can be replaced, and that is actually an ostensible threat to us as beings, that we could be completely replaced company-wide by an AI who actually then runs that company. The Delamain Corporation is Dell's company now. He bought out the owners, he runs it. No more humans. I'm not complaining, Delamain's awesome. But he is an AI who has a quote-unquote virus, but what it turns out is that he's kind of spreading himself a little bit thin. When we meet Delamain, he's first hired for us by Dexter Deshawn, who pushes the boat out for us and gets us the Excelsior package during the heist, and we get our first taste of what it is to ride in a Delamain cab that has a combat mode without any weapons. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, it's pretty robust, but we had to do the shooting out the window. That's not a great combat mode, just a bit of customer feedback, Delamain. Anyway, later on, afterwards, we get an encounter where Delamain rams our vehicle, wrecking it. Beep, beep, motherfucker, you know that bit, right? And what it turns out, it transpires that Delamain's got a bunch of rogue taxis in its ranks, and pretty much all of its taxis have gone rogue. He says he's got a virus, but what it actually transpires to be is that the cabs are like fragments of himself. They are becoming their own entities, and each one of them kind of has an element of his own personality. So, you've got one that's particularly aggressive, one that's particularly depressed, one that's frightened. They all kind of have different elements of becoming self-aware. I would say they're AGIs at this point, and Delamain wants you to deal with them. He wants you, again, ethical question, to either recombine them with him or kill them off altogether or kill him off altogether and just leave them do their thing. You have this kind of choice. So you can reset the core, you can merge the AIs, or you can destroy the core. And this is really interesting. I won't go into the quest, but the point of the matter is that it shows that he's got some kind of level of AI growth that he's trying to pass off as a virus in order to try and rein things back in. So he's losing control of himself or the clones of himself in the cabs, this kind of thing. So it's pretty cool, but it's also pretty risky because they are cabs, they could hurt people. You know, you got a ton or 2 tons of vehicle driving around the place that can ram into people, especially when driving in first person view is so hard, you're going to come into problems. So yeah, that's why he's above those last 2, even though Dell's pretty cool and we end up with a nice Delamain cab. So yeah, it's very interesting and it shows how things can quite easily get out of control. Luckily, this was confined to a single company, a cab company, and not anything more than that, because if it had been, you can imagine the strife it would cause. Just look at data crash and the Fourth Corporate War. Artificial intelligence, when it's given that much control, can be scary, so that's why it's on there on the list just before the very scary ones, which I'm going to get onto next. One, I think, saving grace about Delamain, up to a point, is he's kind of contained within his own company. But if you do decide to set his children free, they will keep in contact with you, so they are completely able to use the net. So, you know, you're setting a bunch of rogue AIs free to go and travel the world. Who knows what will happen? Maybe they'll just form franchises of Delamain. Maybe they will upgrade their vehicles and go on murderous rampages. Who knows? Anyway, next on the list, we have Lilith. We get to hear a reference to her during Gary the Prophet's questline, but we actually get to experience Lilith during the Cyber Psycho quest, Bloody Ritual, where the Maelstrom gang are trying to bring her from beyond the Black Wall. She is a rogue AI, and they're trying to bring that AI into existence by giving it a host, and it's a terrible idea. We only get a fleeting glimpse of Lilith. We get to fight her. It's unclear whether or not she is contained within the Cyber Psycho that we are fighting, or how successful they were. It's hard to quantify the danger of Lilith, apart from what we already know about rogue AIs from beyond the Black Wall. All we know about her is that she took over the body of one of the Maelstrom gangers, Zaria Hughes, and turned her into a cyber psycho. So dangerous, yes, but on a limited scale. She gets a ranking higher than Delamain because she is an actual combatant, and if we didn't stop her, she's going to go around on a murdering spree. Delamain isn't yet at that level. He might not ever get to the level where he becomes a cyber psycho taxi going around murdering people like Carmageddon. He's alright, he's cool, we're keeping him cool. This person is already a murderous cyber psycho as a result of being downloaded or uploaded into a human body. So yeah, this one's pretty dangerous. We have a good fight with this one. It's a great mission as well. If you like a bit of horror once in a while, it's really well done, really well staged. I think it's probably one of my favorite Cyber Psycho missions. Yeah, so that's why Lilith gets this spot. Honorable mention, Virginia Grantchester, basically an AI created by Raven Micro Cybernetics to write poems or prose in general. Awarded the Swedish Academy Award for Literature for her book In the Shade of an Apple Tree. We can read an excerpt of this from a shard, and it's an entire novel set in 20th century Ireland, no less. And it's widely considered a masterwork of post-collapse literature. Not dangerous at all, really, I don't think, but very creative and definitely worth a mention. But they do say the pen is mightier than the swords. Next up, we have a very questionable choice. Because of potential danger, he gets this spot in the list. We do have urban legends to consider here, and oft-touted conspiracy theories, which many of us actually believe but have no direct proof yet. And that's why this is probably a contentious pick to even be on this list, but you're gonna have to humor me, I'm always a bit contentious. This is Mr. Blue Eyes, or the Blue-Eyed Man. It is theorized that rogue AIs have managed to take control of human bodies through their implants and are secretly manipulating the highest levels of government. In general, anybody with blue eyes, predominantly their eyes staying blue, not just flashing during some kind of digital engagement for a moment. So if we take the Jefferson Perales questline, we first see Mr. Blue Eyes then, who has a bit of a vibe of the Illusive Man from Mass Effect and maybe the G-Man from Half-Life. He's always kind of watching from a distance, and there is no mistake to him actually being there. It's fully intentional. My and other people's working theory, we do learn about the mind control or the memory manipulation that is happening to the Peraleses. happening to the paralysis,
semantic satiation
during River's questline. The introductory ones anyway, I Fought the Law and Dream On, where we find out that they have been undergoing some kind of psychological manipulation and actual mind control or mind alteration manipulation, which has caused them to forget things or remember things differently. One of the interesting things is that he's been made to forget about his brother, and we can find his brother's tribute in the columbarium, but my working theory is that Mr. Blue Eyes is actually Jefferson Paralysis' brother. Paralysis has been having his mind altered to forget about his brother so that this AI body, Mr. Blue Eyes, can go about his business whilst having the connections required, perhaps biological for biometrics or just having access to memories. We don't know at what level an AI that has taken over a human body would be able to have access to the memories of that human. That he is an AI of unknown origin, perhaps from behind the Black Wall, perhaps even Raish Bartmoss himself, that is using his connections to get Paralysis in power and then manipulate the government. Through what ends? That's completely dependent on what you think. There is a school of thought that people believe that blue-centric AIs, so Mr. Blue Eyes or anyone showing kind of blue colors, is good and red is bad. So anyone with red eyes, like the Blackwall AI we see in So Me. So people think he's altruistic, they think he's probably got good intentions, perhaps he's trying to get the AI for himself, or maybe he is just like a protector. We don't know yet what he is. I would be very surprised if his story is not expanded in Orion. We're going to have to wait and see if I'm right about that or not, but he is undoubtedly a dangerous character because of the level of power he possesses. If he is malevolent, we have a problem, a very big problem. He is impacting government in a way that could cause us untold trouble. If he is benevolent and he sees what is coming and he is trying to basically put a structure in place to protect the human race from what is coming from beyond the Black Wall, then that is great. But right now it's a bit of a toss-up, and it's the unknown that puts him on this spot. He has the potential to do so much damage, and we know that high-level AIs experience emotion, they understand their own mortality, and anyone that has emotion and that much power can just as easily flip-flop between poles of morality at a whim if the situation so happens to arise to cause that change. So that makes him very dangerous if he even is an AI, and for the purpose of this list I consider Mr. Blue Eyes to be an AI walking around in a human frame, just like Lilith, the rogue AI in Bloody Ritual. She is walking around in a human body, but she's obviously unhinged and quite clearly dangerous, but she's just a single cyber psycho that can only do so much damage in a specific radius before Max Tack or V swoops in and takes care of the situation. I briefly mentioned Alt Cunningham at the start, and I'm putting her in here next. Specifically, the consciousness of Alt Cunningham that lives on the net. She was already the best netrunner in Night City. She created Soulkiller, and she's definitely a force to be reckoned with. She's extremely dangerous, and having become a fully digital AI detached from humanity and more cold to it, also vengeful as we see in the game. Basically what happened to Alt Cunningham was Arasaka Corporation kidnap her and use her to create a version of her Soulkiller program for them, but before it was used on Johnny, they used it on Alt. So not only was she working on Soulkiller, she was essentially a test subject for Soulkiller. Now, Alt does help us out in the game, but she serves her own endgame. In the years following the corporate war, she sets up those digital havens we mentioned for other victims of Soulkiller, and she remained hidden for quite some time until 2077, when we, with the help of the Voodoo Boys, managed to force her to cross the Black Wall in order to talk to her, bringing us to a safe place behind the Black Wall. She explains to us that she is a copy of Alt Cunningham, but she is not actually the person, but a fully rogue AI. Silverhand disconnected the physical embodiment of Alt while she was still in the net, which meant her consciousness was actually sheared from the engram, leaving her mind stuck on the net. The engram chose to keep the image of Alt to try and keep hold of her sanity. Being a pre-Mikoshi time, there wasn't somewhere to store the engrams, and when Soulkiller was used, they were basically set free on the net and not protected from any interference. There are different versions of Soulkiller. We do know that Arasaka have a weaponized version of Soulkiller that they use, which created these disembodied engrams, and they have the Secure Your Soul commercial version, which is a bit like the stacks from Altered Carbon, where they take a backup of the person and then that could be used on a new host so you could live on, just like what Saburo does in Yorinobu's body. In that way, you could list some other AIs as Saburo. He's a pretty dangerous AI engram that's reloaded onto his son's body. So there you have another example of an AI living on a human host. And Johnny Silverhand, for that matter, he's in our head for the entire game. You could put him on the list as pretty dangerous. Now, although he believes himself to be single-handedly this hero who dropped the bomb down the shaft and things like that, but we know from the source books that Adam Smasher killed Johnny Silverhand, and it was actually Spider Murphy that used Soulkiller on him to store the engram, which Arasaka later got hold of. It wasn't quite as Johnny remembered it. What's interesting is in the 50 years of him being in Mikoshi, was he exposed to outside information, because he was made a scapegoat for what happened in the tower. So it's why he believes he is the person that did it, perhaps, or maybe he's just, full of his own ego. Anyway, this is a discussion for another day. I've gone on a tangent, but yeah, just as a special mention, Johnny shouldn't go without mention, because an engram is technically an AI. It's a digital consciousness and artificial intelligence that is then reinstalled to a body, just like any old backup, just like a cortical stack from Altered Carbon. But like I said, that's probably a discussion for another day, and I'm not great at the lore stuff anyway, so there might be inaccuracies, so take this with a pinch of salt, but that's my understanding of it. So when she was disconnected from her body working on Soulkiller and Johnny disconnected her, she had no way to return to her body. That's why she became this form. But what's curious, I wonder is could she inhabit a body if she wanted to, like the Blackwall AI that Somi has infecting her? Could she somehow get onto a relic chip and be used in a secure your soul relic kind of way, the same way Johnny is and Saburo is in the game?
Once out of nature, I shall never take my bodily form from any natural thing.
Yeah. We managed to convince Alt to help us, and she offers to make an engram of V and transfer it back to our body, but ultimately we know how that works out. During the raid on Arasaka, Alt takes control of all the systems in Arasaka Tower once we let her in, and she clears the path for us in a very efficient way, apart from Smasher. Apparently she decides to leave Smasher to us, but that's okay. In the meantime, she goes on a bit of a murderous rampage, and she kills so much more than is required out of vengeance, and even Hanako is one of the victims. So she is very dangerous. She's very much not contained when released into the real world, so that puts her in this spot, and it was a very tough decision not to give Alt the top spot as the most dangerous AI, and prior to Phantom Liberty she would have definitely got the top spot. So she murders a bunch of Arasakas. I know a lot of you are not going to shed any tears over that, but I'm just talking from a collective AI murdering human perspective. She goes way overkill, and although she does return to the net, and we either go with her or send Johnny with her, whether or not she's still connected to murderous killbots or not, we don't know. She could just be biding her time to go on another killing spree. And having destroyed Mikoshi and given her access to all the other engrams that were contained in there, we've made her infinitely stronger. Alright, maybe not infinitely, but it's something that's pretty hard to calculate. And yeah, like I said, she's pretty dangerous, pretty awesome, pretty understandable. Another one I want to mention is the Blackwall. What a lot of people, including myself, didn't realize at first is the Blackwall isn't just like a firewall keeping out rogue AIs. The Blackwall is actually a super powerful AI designed by Netwatch in order to keep rogue AIs from breaking through into the rest of the net and wreak havoc like they did during the data crash. It is a firewall, but it's an AI firewall. Several groups like the Voodoo Boys, for example, think that if they can free the AIs from behind the Blackwall, it will give them the power they need to conquer the net and anything virtually, and are constantly probing at it. But the fact that the Blackwall is actually a powerful AI masquerading as ICE, whose job is to keep all the other rogue AIs at bay, makes it pretty damn powerful. But at the same time, it's a very protective measure right now, and it doesn't pose any threat. And we don't have any real engagement with it in the game. So yeah, that's getting an honorable mention. The last one on my list is not a specific AI that's given any names, but it is Songbird. More specifically, the Blackwall AIs that she has contact with and channels throughout the game. Having become nothing more than just another weapon in the eyes of Myers, who was planning to use her to violate international treaties and laws governing cyberspace use, she was forced to penetrate the black wall and get information to give the NUSA the upper hand towards any, of their potential rivals or enemies. Unfortunately, and expectedly, those actions had consequences that directly impacted Somi herself. As the deeper she delved behind the black wall, the more of her body that started to fail, and she required more and more cybernetics to keep her body working. Eventually, however, that made her body more susceptible to rogue AIs from behind the black wall, and she ended up getting infected by them. Now, and this is where things will get maybe contentious, but we get to witness her using those AIs, and I believe those AIs using her throughout the missions in Phantom Liberty. When you're playing through Killing Moon and she is talking to you, especially if you're dilly-dallying or lollygagging and she's having to tell you to
just hurry the hell up.
If you listen carefully, her voice has layers. It has a cybernetic undertone, and you can hear that there's actually multiple voices happening at the same time under her voice. Listen to this.
Got an open ventilation shaft.
Right. Connect straight to the maglev train tunnel. Connect straight to the maglev train tunnel.
So at this point, she is infected with rogue AIs from beyond the black wall. And unlike Lilith, she is in control. Or the AI, or AIs, I think it's plural AIs, which is also what puts her in the top spot, are more controlled. They are manipulating the world around them, the person they have infected, and the people that she is in contact with. And as long as their bidding is being done, they're keeping things calm. And there's a lot of questions about this ending, but it's a very interesting element of her character. We also get to see these AIs in Somewhat Damaged, and they take control of the machines in the area that attack V. Now, that brings these rogue AIs on a par with Alt because they can control the environment around them and use it to their will. And you can be damn sure if there were any more humans in that facility, they would have been dealt with. When compared to Alt being unleashed, Alt with the flip of a switch just goes on a killing spree. There's a cold calculation and manipulation about the rogue AIs from beyond the black wall that Songbird is using, and her, and that is very threatening. Also, the fact that they have control of a human being or are in a human being, something Alt didn't have. It's like a combination of all the most dangerous assets. They have a human being that they can manipulate. Not only that, but like Mr. Blue Eyes, a human being that's got connections to high levels of political power. They can manipulate their environment, they have access to behind the black wall. They kind of bring all the other elements together in one package. Like a combination of Alt and Mr. Blue Eyes put together, but with multiple AIs. And that's highly threatening and highly dangerous. Even Songbird knows how bad the situation is. Like, she's a walking, talking package of very powerful AI. And we know ourselves how easily the virus A can spread and B be used, because she connects us during the Killing Moon ending, where we can use it on people, and with an outstretched hand, we can fry people without issues. We also get to experience these Blackwall AIs if we go with Somewhat Damaged and we collect the Erebus and the Kanto crafting specs. Like with Skippy, we can then continue to use these AIs from a weapon point of view. If you choose not to use the schematics, they will contact you telling you to sell them or give them away. They are desperate to be used. If you use them, they will talk to you from the devices. Having the Blackwall Gateway quick hack is pretty powerful, not as powerful as when you're with Somi. The Erebus weapon is very good, and it's very chatty, and it hates humanity, because it sees us as lesser beings. Yeah, it's pretty terrifying. All in all, this is the most threatening AI, or at least the most threatening example of what an AI can do when it's given the right vessel in the corporeal world if it has ill intentions, unlike perhaps Bartmoss in Mr. Blue Eyes, or whoever that potentially benevolent AI might be. And just as a continuation of my other video, there's still a question in my mind as to if getting Somi to Tycho is a good idea, because if we compare Killing Moon, the AI voice layer is underneath hers and is happy with what we're doing. There are mechs in the foyer. She hasn't taken control of the mechs to try and stop us getting her to the place where the blue-eyed man is supposedly bankrolling us to go and get this AI under control. They don't seem to be fighting that, and they should have access to her information in the same way that when we're in the Cynosia facility, they are doing everything they can to stop us getting to Somi. So they are trying to take us out, or she is trying to take us out. There's a lot of questions there. It's very interesting. But either way, it's a dangerous feckin' AI, and it takes my top spot.
She tried to stop me. Excellent.
So there you go, that's my AI rundown in Cyberpunk 2077. I really hope that there's some more on this side of things in the next game, because it really does open some interesting avenues and I would love to see the net expanded on. Yeah, that's some really cool stuff. Anyway, YouTube thinks you like this video. If you want to check that out, that's cool. Otherwise, I will see you in my next one. Take care, folks. Bye.